Hey guys, welcome to lesson 1.2.2, day 1. You might notice we skipped 121. Don't worry about that. 122 is going to be all about something called asymptotes. It's a funky word, but it's pronounced asymptotes. And they are involved with rational functions. And a rational function is something that has x on the denominator of a fraction, right? So an equation where x is on the bottom is a rational function. So we're going to try to graph one, and we're going to explore what these graphs look like and how this thing called asymptote comes into play. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, and I would love for you to follow along with me so you know how to do this as well, is to grab your calculator and hit the y equals button. And you're going to go ahead and type the equation just as you see it here. Okay, remember to make sure to put parentheses around the bottom, otherwise it will not come out right. Okay, so if you want to pause the video and graph this in your calculator, please do that. Okay, once you have typed it in, you're going to go ahead and hit graph. Okay, and this is what our graph looks like. It's really weird, probably not like anything you've seen before. It has a pretty funky shape to it. So what we're going to do first is fill out this table to help us graph it on our paper. So we're going to hit second and graph. Remember, that's how we get to the table. And I've already scrolled it up to the numbers we want here. So let's go ahead and fill out our table. At -6, it is -0.2, and maybe let me make this big. Alright. Oh, it's probably going to disappear. Oh, nope, it didn't. Alright, -6 is at -0.2, -5 is -0.25, -4 is -0.33, -3 is -0.5. Okay. We have an error here, which that's what we're going to talk about later, so just go with it for now. And you'll see we have some repeating numbers. Alright. Okay, so we have jotted down all of our table values that we need. This is going to give us enough information to draw a pretty good graph. And in the end, your graph should look something like this. So when it comes to graphing these decimals, it does not have to be like perfect. It's just going to be an estimation. So -6, -0.2, we're going to go left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then -0.2 is just going to come down a little bit, you know. 0.2, I mean, it's going to be an estimation. -5, -0.25, and again, don't worry too much about being too precise here. -4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is at -0.33. -3 is at -0.5. I know these all kind of look like they're in the same spot. It's just very difficult to be, like I said, too precise on this kind of graph. Here's one that's different. -2, -1. -1, there's an error, so we're going to skip that. We're going to go straight to 0. We're at 1. 1 is at 0.5, and then 0.33, 0.25, 0.2. Okay, and then we're going to sketch our curve. We're going to try our best to make it look like this. I apologize in advance for my graph because it's probably going to be a little rough. But what's important is to notice how the graph looks when it gets close to the x-axis, right? If I pull up the big view again, you'll see that the graph gets really, really close to the x-axis, and I know it looks like it's on the x-axis, but actually it's never going to touch the x-axis, okay? It just gets infinitely close. So when we draw our graph, we want to make sure to draw it in a way that shows that we aren't going to touch the x-axis. I'm going to try that one more time. Maybe be a little more on the dots. Okay, it just gets really close. And then also I want you guys to notice that the graph, the lines, they also don't go past -1 either, right? If you look at this tick mark, this graph just gets closer and closer, and so does this part of the graph. So we want to reflect that in our picture as well. Okay, not gonna lie, I'm gonna try one more time. I just want this graph to look decent, you know. This effort might not be either, but I'm here for it. Alright, so I'm getting really, really close to -1, and the graph does go on forever, so I'm just putting arrows on the end there. And we're going to do a similar thing for the other one. Right? Again, it should not touch the x-axis. Yikes. And it also shouldn't touch really this -1 line either. Trying my best with this little pen thing I have. Alright, well, that's going to have to do. Okay, so our graph could be better, but it also could be worse. So now that we've created our picture, we're going to go ahead and find some important information about our graph. X-intercepts, that's the points where we hit the x-axis, right? And remember I said that our graph actually never touches the x-axis, so you're going to go ahead and put none. Now on My Open Math, oftentimes they'll have you type DNE when you don't have an answer for it, so you can also use that. Okay, y-intercepts, that's going to be this guy right here. It's pretty obvious on this graph, you know, the point where we hit the y-axis, and that happens at 0, 1. Okay. The min, that's the lowest point of our graph. Now, if you look at our graph and this downward arrow, that indicates to us that this graph is going to go down forever and ever. So we do not have a minimum. So again, none or DNE does not exist, like in Mean Girls. Okay, the max. Now, just like how the graph was going down forever, it also goes up forever as well. So we don't have a max either. So exciting. All right, now this is the new stuff right here. Horizontal and vertical asymptotes. Now, these guys are precisely those lines that the graph will never touch. Okay, remember I said that these graphs will never touch the x-axis? And that's because there is a horizontal asymptote on the x-axis. And I'm going to draw over it with this blue. Okay, that is our horizontal asymptote. And because this asymptote hits the y-axis at 0, right, the equation for it is going to be y equals 0. All right. And so that's the horizontal one. The vertical one, remember how our graph was never crossing that -1 tick mark? That's because we have a vertical asymptote at -1. All right. Struggling, but you know, you get the point. So our vertical asymptote, we need to also make an equation for. Now this one hits the x-axis at -1, right? Right here at -1. So this one is actually going to be x equals -1. Vertical is always going to be x equals, and horizontal is always going to be y equals. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're choosing your numbers. Horizontal is where you hit the y-axis, so that's why it's y equals. Vertical is where you hit the x-axis, so that's why it's x equals. All right, and that is pretty much all we need to know how to do for today. Okay, make sure you understand how to find these equations for our asymptotes and also how to spot them on the graph. All right, go ahead and give the practice problems a try.